Art of Mrs. Chu by Patricia Polacco. I discovered how much I loved the art the summer I spent with my grandmother and father in Michigan. It's really hard to read with this little spotlight on it of this light. Grandma said I was an artist, and she drew and painted so beautifully. Grandma even told me that I was a natural artist, so I couldn't wait to take art at school next fall when I got home to California. I only had one problem left: tests. I just couldn't seem to pass them. I was back in California and I loved school. Hard to believe because I had a lot of trouble reading. But not anymore. I really liked my new teacher, Mr. Donovan. He was from Ireland and had sky blue eyes, a laugh that sounded like bells ringing, and a great Irish accent. He loved telling stories about his family back home, especially about his father. Seemed like he always had a smile on his face. But he didn't have a smile the day he handed back my first social studies test. I could feel my face get real hot, but when I unfolded it, an F again. The trouble was everyone read faster than me. Even though I knew the subject real well, I'd run out of time before I was finished, and I started having stomach aches when I knew a weekly test was coming up. Mr. Donovan finally sat me down. "You know the subject, Tricia. What you need is extra time." He started giving me the time I needed, and sure enough, I began passing tests. But that didn't help my other problem. There was no real art class in my school, just art on a cart for 30 minutes once a week. Then one day Mr. Donovan saw one of my drawings. He picked it up and hung it on the bulletin board. "Patricia, you have a remarkable talent." All the kids in the class crowded up to look at my picture. "Man, oh man, you can draw," Davy Mulford remarked. "Wow," Ricky Scrub agreed. Even Leon Price, who never spoke to me because she was so popular, was impressed. I felt so proud. It wasn't a day later when Mr. Donovan told me about Miss Chu, the head of the high school art department. She has a special art program for young artists on Tuesdays and Thursdays. When I showed her your drawing, she said that she wanted you in her class. Now, what would you be thinking of that, Miss Trish? I love drawings. Sometimes when I was drawing, I'd forget to breathe. I danced all the way home that day. I couldn't wait to tell my mother. The very next Tuesday, I never walked so fast in my life as I did to get to Miss Chu's class on time. I never had seen a room like hers. The windows went from the ceiling to floor, giant easels at one end, rows of drying racks at the other, and paint everywhere. I didn't know anybody. Then Miss Chu breezed into the room. Her smock was covered in paint as it was painting herself. She was tall and slender and spoke with a Chinese accent. "We have a new student today," she said, motioning toward me with her beautiful long fingers. "Her name is Teresa Barber." "Teresa? No!" I wanted to shout. "My name is Patricia." But Miss Chu had already spun around and was passing out sketchbooks. From that day on, I was Teresa. I could barely understand Miss Chu's accent. "In this class, we are going to learn how to speak another language." She touched her heart. "The language of art." "Art? A language?" But Miss Chu went on. "It isn't spoken. It is the language of emotion and images. But first," she told us, "you need to learn how to see." "See!" She plopped down 2 salt shakers in the middle of the table. "Open your sketchbooks. Take up your pencils. Now draw the shakers. But first, young friends, see them. Don't just look at them. See them. See how the light dances through the glass and makes a shadow pattern on the table? Yes, draw it I saw it. Draw it, said Miss Chu. See how you can make your pencil line darker and lighter? She changed the line from dark to light. Yes, I saw that too. Yes, Teresa, Miss Chu said. You have it. Now do your drawings again. Move the shakers off center. Let them run off the page on purpose. Make them bigger. Get the dancing light as it makes a shadow, she's saying as she moved from table to table. She made us draw those shakers 6 different times in 6 different ways. At the end of the day, she said, take your sketchbooks everywhere with you. First see, then draw. I couldn't wait. I took my sketchbook everywhere with me. On the bus ride home, I drew people sitting in their seats, even the bus driver. When I got home, I drew apples in a bowl and my cat Tilly. At dinner, I made my mom and my brother Richie sit so I could draw them. Ain't you got no homework? My brother groaned. This is homework, I said. Sit a little longer. I almost have you. The next day, after I'd finished my assignment, I asked Mr. Donovan if I could make a drawing of his father from the photo on the desk. I tried to remember everything Miss Chu had told me. The next art class, Miss Chu called me up to her desk. Everyone else had handed in 1 or 2 sketches. I had done 20. Your drawings are very good. Her eyes smiled as if we had a secret. The cat, your apples, your mother and brother, you've captured every detail. I particularly see your use of negative space. Negative space? See this drawing, Teresa? What do you see? She held up the picture. 2 people looking at each other. Anyone could see that. Now, Teresa, instead of looking at the 2 faces, look at what's between them. Nothing. Wait. A tall stemmed cup. First, you read the negative space. Now you are reading the actual object. What an idea! I started looking at all of my own pictures for negative space. I was so happy, but a few weeks later, Mr. Donovan was called to the office. When he came back, his eyes were red. He couldn't seem to talk. He just stared out the window. Finally, he spoke. Me da died today, he whispered. Our whole class got out of our seats and tried to comfort him. He left for Ireland the next day. This is when we got Miss Spaulding, a substitute. She never smiled. Worst of all, when I was taking my weekly test, she came up and ripped the paper behind me and ripped the paper out of my pencil. Time's up, she barked. Miss Spaulding, I'm not finished. Mr. Donovan always gives me extra time because I'm not Mr. Donovan, and when I say you are finished, you are finished. Of course, I failed the test. That's just when she got plain mean. Your time would be better spent studying for your tests instead of leaving the school to take art classes, she hissed. And I'm going to see if I can make that happen. I tried to be brave and not tell Miss Chu, but in class I began to cry and blurted out the threat that Miss Spaulding had made. Miss Chu began to shake her head slowly. Teresa, she said, you can say you can't read fast enough to finish your tests? I nodded. I watch you draw, and you begin drawing by drawing what is in the negative space. I remember the picture of the 2 girls facing the glass. When you see a word, I don't think you see letters at first. I think first you see the space around them, the pattern they make. No wonder your reading takes you so much time, Miss Chu said. I smiled, but I wasn't quite sure what she meant. I know what can help, a reading specialist. No one is taking you from this class. I sprang to my feet and hugged her. And tomorrow, Teresa, I'm assigning you an easel. You are not only ready for the painting, but maybe you can be part of the high school spring art show. The following day, Miss Spaulding announced we would take a citywide test that would determine what classes we take next year. We had 45 minutes to finish. I only finished half of the test. I knew my art class was over, but when I told Miss Chu, she said, we'll see about that. Mom's permission, she would take me herself to see her friend, a reading specialist. After class, Miss Chu took me to her car, a convertible. As we drove off, the car sounded like it was growling, and I loved it when we drove past our school and Miss Spaulding actually saw us. Dr. McClare played what seemed like 100 reading games with me, but I wasn't afraid. I knew he was trying to help. When he finally called Miss Chu in, he said, "You're spot on, Miss Chu. She reads patterns, not words. This takes time." Miss Chu wanted a meeting with all the players. As everyone came, the principal, Miss Spaulding, Miss Chu, Dr. McClare, and my mother. Miss Spaulding said an extra art class was simply a distraction. Tricia is drawing instead of studying. But Miss Chu said, but she needs extra time to finish her tests, all tests. When she and Dr. McClare said that I see things differently than most students, Miss Spaulding scoffed as if to say, what could an art teacher know about how a child learns? I don't tell you to teach a child how to draw. It was as if she maybe didn't think art teachers were real teachers, that maybe art wasn't even a real class. Mr. Donovan came back exactly 2 days later. I couldn't help myself. I ran to him and hugged him. "I'm so glad you are back," I said. When someone else told him what Miss Spaulding was trying to do, he got real red in the face. I don't know exactly what happened after that day, but it seemed like Miss Spaulding no longer was needed as a substitute, not in the whole school. So I went into Miss Chu's class every Tuesday and Thursday. Of course, as soon as Mr. Donovan gave me extra time when I took my test, I passed them with flying colors. I decided to use a sketch of Mr. Donovan's father for my first painting. When Miss Chu saw it, she just stood there and looked at it. "Teresa, this sketch is so full of emotion and love. You most certainly have learned the language of art. Mr. Donovan will be so moved." When I finished the painting, she said, "Teresa, this painting is going to be part of the art show. You will be the only exhibiting artist who isn't a high school student." I couldn't believe it. Me in the spring art show. Later that day, Miss Chu asked me to stay after class. She handed me a package wrapped in bright red tissue paper and said softly, "We Chinese believe that red brings luck. And Teresa, remember the ancient Chinese proverb, yesterday a history, tomorrow a mystery, today a gift." "That is why it's called the present," she smiled. When I opened the gift, I caught my breath. It was one of Miss Chu's painting smocks. For me, I wanted to cry. When I looked in her eyes, she had tears too. Only a week later, I wore my new smock to the art show. Light was dancing off the mirror chandeliers. Our paintings were everywhere. I was so proud. Then I saw Mr. Donovan standing in front of my painting of his father. He couldn't speak. He took my hand and squeezed it. Miss Chu came up to us. She too looked radiant. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she whispered to him. I looked at the two of them. Miss Chu was right. This moment was a present. It turned out to be the most defining moment in my young life. I was set on the course to be an artist. It could be no other way, thanks to the amazing art of Mrs. Chu. It's the end of our story. Check it out.